All right, Tickety-Boo News. So Woodward and Bernstein, right, the guys who broke Watergate, made some really interesting comments about the press the other day. So I just want to play, I guess it's cut 5 we have? Yeah. Let's play cut 5 and listen to what they say.
The press is in the United States, as our leaders have recognized going back to the days of the early republic, the last bastion of truth that makes democracy function. Yes, we make mistakes, and we need to admit our mistakes. We oughtn't to be too provocative, which we sometimes are with a president who's putting a lot of bait out there, and sometimes we take the bait and get a little petty. I'd like to see a lot less of criticizing on our air the president for playing golf. Let him play all the golf that he wants. I don't think that's our job.
So that was Bernstein, who was a virulent left-winger and not always, in my opinion, very honest in his criticism. Woodward, who is a much more balanced guy and a much more talented journalist, in my opinion. He also said that the press had become smug. And these guys, I was a newspaper reporter right after Watergate. And we thought we were heroes. They had given us, Woodward and Bernstein had given us this very heroic idea of the press. But I want to remind you of what that idea looked like, because when I was a newspaper reporter, I worked with at least one guy who went on to become one of the most famous New York Times reporters, a tremendous liberal. And any time I made any liberal assumption, he would call me out on it. He would yell at me, really go after me. I was a neophyte reporter. I was just trying to learn how to do it. And he would call me out, and he would say, I don't believe that same guy, would do that today. But let's just look back at All the President's Men, which is a basic hagiography of Woodward and Bernstein, the movie made from their telling of how they exposed Watergate. At this famous scene where Ben Bradley, the editor of the paper, calls them out on not having sources who can be named. He's looking at a story that they think is a big story, and he says, no, you have not got this story.
You haven't got it. Librarian and secretary say Hunt looked at a book. That's not good enough.
White House aide told me that Hunt was investigating Kennedy.
Who was it?
Who was it? You want the name, you mean?
No. How senior? How high up?
I don't know titles.
Show a special interest in. We said the White House was investigating Kennedy.
Show a special interest in.
Jesus, story stronger than that. We got a White House librarian who said that Hunt checked out a whole lot of books. We got a secretary in Colson's office that Hunt was sitting at the desk.
Carl. Ben, that's a page 1 story.
Stick it inside someplace.
This is an important story.
Get some harder information next time.
Get some harder information next time. So, the press, one of the things I always say about leftists, I don't know if you remember that scene in Men in Black where the alien comes down and eats the farmer. He kills the farmer and then puts on his flesh as a suit, and the alien wears the farmer as a suit. That is what leftism does to institutions, whether it's Yale or the New York Times. It goes in and eats out the core of them and then wears the New York Times or Yale as a suit and walks around pretending to be the old Yale or the old New York Times. And that is what has happened to journalism, mainstream journalism in this country. It really has. Leftism has eaten it out from within. So when they report, that Mike Flynn has implicated candidate Donald Trump in collusion with Russia, or that the Russians passed the Trump campaign a secret key to a WikiLeaks file, or what the New York Times did shamefully, in my opinion, over the holiday, is they ran this front page story of essentially FBI propaganda, because FBI is being caught out using this Steele dossier, this ridiculous Steele dossier. They may have used it to get a FISA warrant. It may have inspired their Russia collusion story, and the entire Russian collusion story may in fact be, this is not proved yet, but it's certainly a worthwhile suspicion at this point, may in fact be the FBI's way of attacking Trump and hiding the partisan way they behaved in the run-up to the election, that they were spying on Trump for the Obama administration. And so the New York Times ran this story saying, oh, now we know it wasn't the Steele dossier, it was George Papadopoulos, in Russia drinking, or in Australia, whatever it was he was drinking, where now the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, said today that George Papadopoulos was not a name on my radar scope when I left. So it really is like the New York Times is now using unnamed sources that nobody can check, sources that nobody knows how reliable they are. The FBI has a point to make, and the New York Times is allowing them to make it. They're not following the rules that made journalism heroic and made it great. That was what made, the press hated Nixon. They hated Nixon, but even as much as they hated him, they went after him with respect. They had to get the facts. They had to get people who would come on record. They had to use their off-the-record sources to get people to come on record and confirm the stories. I mean, it just made them crazy if they had two off-the-record guys. Let me just end with a montage from Sean Hannity. Have we got that? Yeah, it's cut number 12. This is why they're pleased, their idea that Trump's attacks on the media are somehow attacks on the First Amendment simply won't wash. Here is a montage that Hannity put together of the way the media looks at Trump.
This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president, in part.
There's a sign out there that's been hung up in the White House or outside the White House saying, if you're not white, you're not especially welcome.
This is a man who is not well. He alternated between being a whiny 6-year-old who's had his Nintendo taken away and between being the cranky old man who's out there condemning everyone who doesn't worship him adequately.
Donald Trump, short of only maybe Woodrow Wilson and Andrew Jackson, is being himself more than any other previous president with disgraceful racial views.
He said today, America first. It was not just the racial, the Hitlerian background to it.
Is Donald Trump competent to be president?
President Trump say America first. Tonight, President Trump put himself first.
A little whiff of fascism tonight, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely.
Leftism eats out the principles and core of organizations and leaves them empty, and then it demands the respect that those organizations earned before leftism killed them. And so that's what has happened to the press, and the press needs to start on the long road back to becoming what it should be and what it used to be. Tomorrow, I think John Nolte, the Noltenator, is coming on. We love this guy. It's great to talk to him, see him, and find out what he thinks of the new year. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is the Andrew Klavan Show. Be there then. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Technical producer, Austin Stevens. Edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. And our animations are by Cynthia Angulo and Jacob Jackson. The Andrew Klavan Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2017.